I'd like to call the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission meeting to order on September 2nd, 2022. At any rate, let's see, our first item on the agenda, pardon
We
me?
have a quorum.
We do. 1, 2, 3, and we have microphone. So we do have a quorum. Sally is having to go to Bay State today, so she's going to try to Zoom in if she can, as much as she can. But at any rate, so she was heading home. Sally is here. Let's see Sally's. Hi. So at any rate, the first item on our agenda is to approve the August 19th, 2022 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, and the next thing is we will be going over and still reviewing the lake management plan. So let me do a share screen. And let me find it.
See this.
Sure. Yeah, they gave that out last week, not 2 weeks ago. We should get a big one of these for the shed. You have great people there.
Okay, why am I having trouble here? Hang on, I don't know what just happened.
down here.
I don't know what I did.
Yes. we're talking about
Yeah.
that. Because
Sorry, guys.
Here.
Hey, morning. Hey.
Good morning, how are you?
Patrick.
I'm gonna stop this.
Oh, sunshine.
Good morning.
Patrick,
Are we live?
we are on, but I'm trying to bring up the screen share. I don't know, maybe I'm just too tired today.
Drop these up with the program.
Well, you need better.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, you can have this if you want.
How's it going?
Good.
Okay,
45 degrees.
I love it.
so I didn't,
Wake up cold, yay.
I know, it's nice. Anyways, anybody want the agenda? Pretty simple, we're going over this and then everybody can do an update. So we're gonna start going through this again. I did have a chance to talk to Steve Roy, and basically, I just kind of incorporated my notes about that conversation in here, and then I'll pull them out after. That way I didn't have to look at two different things at once. So we had a question last time. And it had to do with the insertion of a summary. Remember that on page 2? So when I talked to Steve Roy, basically that is a spot that they will create the summary once all the information is in.
Okay.
And the bottom line, and we also had a conversation, and Sally had talked about, you want the public to be able to understand this. And fundamentally, this executive summary in the beginning that's what it's intended for. It's intended for public consumption, so that it pretty much gives you a summarization and outline of exactly what this plan entails. And I'm presuming we could even publish that as a separate document. And obviously we'll be publishing the whole thing, but maybe to make it easy for people, cut down the size, we could put that in a separate document. But that is the intent of that. And they will be filling in and finalizing and editing that based on, once we have all the information in, which we're very close. So,
Can I ask a question on that one?
yeah,
We worked before, when I think it was started in 2019, we were named to that cyanobacteria working group, remember, before this? And I just was wondering if we'd made the point of the work the town had done on cyanobacteria prevention mitigation for a number of years, because we were talking about the stormwater and all the other things that, the town is doing. And I think that maybe is a good one to include, especially because it not only goes to the health of the lake, but preventing it is an economic issue too, that, because it could impact, property values as it's done at a whole bunch of other lakes around the country. I just thought maybe we might want to include some reference to that ongoing work, and really kind of,
Well, what ongoing work is there?
well, you guys, I mean,
Well, in terms of that group, that's still not, is that still an active group? Because
oh, it's not an active group, but I just think, just sort of historically pointing to the fact that we had a bloom in 2018 and, that we're kind of committed to,
response.
yep.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So we'll add that.
Okay.
Let's see.
One of the thing, well, it doesn't matter, it's so petty. The thing we talk about is land values, but, property values, but also community. It affects also the community. It's not just.
Oh, yeah, it's quality of life.
Yeah, quality, yeah. I don't want it, so when people.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
This is going to be a work in progress
Yeah.
forever. We're going to be
Absolutely.
changing it forever.
So let's
keep
just
that in
get
mind.
going
Always that.
and get it to them.
Right, exactly.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it needs to be reviewed at least on an annual basis. And
Yeah.
obviously circumstances change. If something changes, we have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we include anything that we have to address whenever it comes up. So, not a lot changed down here. Let's see. I think I have to go quite a ways in.
That's good news.
Very close to the tail end of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our mission is for Roxanne to get this to them.
Yeah, no, he has this, he keeps getting versions.
Does he give you a general date of when he thinks once today's meeting is over?
No, I'll find that out.
Okay, yeah, no
actually.
problem. No
But we talked yesterday. So anyway, and I did plug in Sally, I did go through, and I missed, yes, I did get magnesium and iron. So when, we have the abbreviations, the periodic table abbreviations, I've at least at some point put in and then in parentheses what that, the abbreviation means, just in case the public does read through this whole thing, that they understand what P means and what MN and FE mean. So,
I had a couple other, I don't know if you got my version with edits and comments, which there wasn't a lot. It was just little ditzy stuff. But
Okay.
like at the beginning of the document, for instance, I really think we need to call out that it's Lake Mackinac because Stockbridge Bowl is its nickname.
good point.
Yes, and it's known to most people as Stockbridge Bowl, but that's not its official name.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I didn't even pick up on that. Thank you. Yeah.
And also on that first page, I don't know, I've had a couple of versions. Now the header page, I've had a couple versions where the Stockbridge Mass is twice in the prepared by,
Oh, yes, it is.
but
Okay.
but in another one, it didn't, it wasn't. So I don't know. I thought somebody corrected that.
Well, that's odd. Okay. Yeah, good point, because I know when I did the mission statement, worked on the mission statement for this group, I made sure that we put Lake Mackinac in there, obviously known as, but good point.
Okay.
What page was I up to?
Sorry.
Here it is. That's okay.
Most of
Okay.
my comments were like that for the most part, just,
Okay. Well, I haven't had a chance to see it. Did you send it yesterday?
yes.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a chance to see it. At some point, I conked out really early yesterday, so I was tired. I'm probably still recovering from driving to Maryland and back. Anyway, so page 23. So when we were talking, one thing that came up and one of the major problems that we do have in the lake is the anoxia at depth. So anyway, I asked Steve Roy to get some suggestions from Dr. Cortman about ways that the problem can be addressed. And is there a way, and have Cortman look at, is there a way we can utilize that diversion drain? So I'm gonna, maybe you can get it as selectman, but detailed information about the diversion drain would be really helpful. The engineering. of it.
You mean the one under the channel?
Yes, the one that we ended up not being able to use.
And the idea would be to try to,
Well,
five and a
there's
half.
two ways to like deal with anoxia. And one is you can do aeration at depth,
yeah,
which Portman has done before. And another way is creating a discharge system so that you're removing the anoxic water at deep levels. Okay, so you're pulling it out. And basically
so basically trying to like kind of bring it from the bottom to the top and over or
out,
through the pipe.
yeah,
Want to get it out.
over and out.
And how far does a pipe go off the lake?
The pipe only goes underneath the gas pipeline and the sewer.
So it doesn't connect back
Maybe
into
80
the,
feet or something?
No, it's longer than that,
You
but
think
it's only, the surface of the caissons are 5.5 feet below the surface of the water. So that's not going to help us much as far as,
so we extended it way back into the lake, but.
Right.
it's, no, that,
Don't be surprised if nothing can be done with that thing.
no.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
To think about,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And then any other things that
Yeah.
he can come up with. But
Don't let that hold
this
you
is
up.
something that's been, I think, relatively big part of his career, and particularly aeration. So it's something
Does he have other ideas for aeration that doesn't involve the pipe or?
Well, one of the things at our meeting
aeration
with,
wouldn't involve the pipe, no.
one of the things that Misty Ann Merrill, she seemed to be very upset with that pipe. She said she didn't want that pipe being used in a way, at least in the manner of which we had originally, and she almost wanted it to be closed up or something.
is.
It is closed up. So just keep that in mind that, so if there's a wonderful way that we can use it, we should incorporate it, but just as a possibility or whatever.
Right.
But she
But that
was
might be-
concerned that we were going to lower the lake and then that would,
Okay.
yeah,
Would you let her know that we have aluminum caps on both ends?
she knows.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Fish
we
can't
went
swim
through it that we
through
can't use.
Fish migration's a big issue.
Yeah,
Kidding, no, just kidding.
yeah.
Okay.
Everything's a big
So,
issue.
but I mean, it's just something to look at in terms of, various things that we can do to address that particular problem. So let me see. Then we got to page 24 where we have these two items, Bullard Woods and the targeted herbicide treatments. And so basically, we had a whole conversation about the fact that our loading is internal loading, and we do not have external loading to the extent that it requires any kind of regulatory requirements, i.e. the percentage is so small in terms of the external loading that it's not an issue. It doesn't affect water quality. So,
Talking about nutrients or about,
Silting.
Phosphorus. Yeah.
Oh,
Phosphorus.
phosphorus loading. So basically, we're way below the allowable total maximum daily load. So regulators, according to Steve, they basically want to ensure, they are always looking at these watershed management plans in that regard. So that's their focus. Now, we don't happen to have this particular problem, which seems to be their primary focus. So they're mostly worried about loading, but we don't have external loading, it's internal. So the dredging may or may not, we don't really know if that's going to impact it, but Steve said it is a possibility that there will be an impact, but we don't really
in a
know.
bad way or in a good way?
Quantify it in any way, shape or form. So anyway, what we have to be really careful about is, and because of that, that's why he's saying, because of that, they're really going to be cautious about multiple projects ongoing at the same time. And it's going to depend on what those projects are. And so the fact that we're focusing on dredging is a good thing. And that really needs to be, this unified focus right now. So anyway, and how do we get that across to the public that, yes, it would be very nice to extend the sewer. Obviously, that's something that could happen in the future. It's not going to happen anytime soon because we have to get through the I&I.
Right, it's 5 years at least,
Yeah,
at least 5.
but that people shouldn't be alarmed by that because that's really not our problem.
Roxanne, how wide would are you suggesting that the sewer project would be in some way impactful on this?
What sewer project?
well, you were just talking about.
Expanding the sewer, I mean, we were talking about having more than one project at once, and I wouldn't think
Oh,
at least
no.
from
No, not in the
conservation point
south.
of view, the two would not be.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
Okay.
that that is, that's for the future.
Okay.
We're not in a place right now that can happen, that the town can make those kinds of long-range plans because they have to deal with the I&I first.
Yeah,
But that people should not be overly concerned about the external loading because it is not that significant.
But in
Right.
phase four, just to clarify, phase four is going to specifically look at priorities for expansion. So we're going to be doing the consult.
No, Patrick, phase 4 is going to be when we repair what they find in phase 3. So Mike Buffoni's here. Mike, can you elaborate on that? If he's still here? I know he's,
Well, I spoke to Mike and I spoke with Tony recently. And this phase 4 is repair, right?
Right, but this-
No expansion has been talked about. We're talking about just repair. First of all, phase 1 and 2, which is completed, leads to phase 3 where the cameras have now been put into place.
Yeah, of course, right.
And then identify where the leaks are coming from and then fixing them. So that would be phase 4, repair and fix. And probably get back 120,000 gallons a day out of it. If of course, we're losing about 40% of the load. So I think we're far, the expansion would have to be pushed back. I don't think that we have a date for the expansion, do we?
No. I think, but I believe that they're part of the.
Can I interrupt once? I apologize. I just want to interrupt. I think, I don't know, at least for me, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. So if you could just give me like an overview of what's happening here.
And yeah,
or-
correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that at some point, whether it's a phase 1 or 2 or 12, that we are envisioning a long-term prioritization of what sewer expansion looks like as a consulting project in terms of prioritizing where it comes next. I thought that was built in somewhere to one of these things we funded last year.
it's not part of the I&I.
Okay.
You know what the I&I thing is?
No, I don't, but I don't know how this all affects the lake management plan
Yeah.
or the,
that was my question, Michael, because,
I'm trying to get my head around this. Yeah.
yeah,
The only way that it affects it is in terms of, and we'll see it farther down where it's listed, but the only way it impacts it is that I&I has to be completed before Sewer and Water Commission can even contemplate putting together any kind of plan to extend the sewer. And that's because this is to repair the inflow and infiltration that's happening now, which means we're losing capacity based on inflow of water into the system where it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, but this is system into the sewer system, right?
Right, but you're treating unnecessary water, and that's creating a capacity problem.
Right, and
Which
microphone.
impacts with the plans of expanding the sewer.
Right, and how does that deal with an issue for restoration or whatever it is? How does
Well,
that connect?
It connects with the fact that we talk about external loading, and we're
Is
talking.
any of that going into the lake? Is any of that?
Oh,
going-
no.
It's coming from septic, basically. We're trying to
okay.
trying to over time minimize that, but it's a
Okay,
really
so
long.
we're not talking, we're talking about
It's minimal.
Trying to figure out.
cousins of this thing, of how it's
For
affecting.
Paulu, the camp.
Okay, all right, now, all right.
All of that.
Right, well, I needed
Yeah.
a introduction to this
all right.
conversation.
Okay,
Okay.
let's see.
Sally, did you get it?
I did,
Okay.
it's like the dredging and the harvesting are both happening in the same place, and therefore they're working on the same resource area. That's where DEP gets bent out of shape. They don't want different projects addressing the same issue going on at the same time, but they've allowed it this time. But I couldn't see where the sewer expansion
No, it
germane to
doesn't.
this. That was what I was wondering.
Yeah, it's only germane to the timing of, why the sewer extension is pushed out in time.
Right,
That's,
okay.
that's the only.
We're all on the same page.
Not to get too off the subject, but the harvest, there is only one project going on at a time. There's only the harvester. We haven't done, we're not doing any other project currently on the lake.
I
except-
understand
Yeah.
that. I understand that. I'm just using that as an example of how
Oh, okay. The year,
doesn't like to see two different projects on
yeah.
the same.
And I think everybody was in agreement that the year we do the restoration, as I call it, and we got to talk about MIPA a minute afterwards, the restoration, we won't do harvesting in the outlet or wherever it is they don't want us to do that year. I mean, it'll be crazy to do it anyway.
Right, when the dredging is actually underway,
Way.
there won't be any harvesting in
Or,
this.
you know, if they don't want us to, then we won't. It's not
Well,
we're not even gonna, no.
Probably couldn't anyways.
I understand. But there might be other areas that could use it if they allowed it. That's
Right,
all.
if they allow it,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, but yeah, and he kind of felt certainly, and I think we all know this, that their main concern, especially NHASP, is just the species of concern. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
So let me see. I did talk to him about our concerns about the historical data being presented first. And he understood what I was saying. So he said, you know, once we get this all together, they're going to massage this. They will be putting it together. This is a template that is used for water management plans. However, they will end up at GZA actually doing some manipulation of this data and reorganization. So, you know, we'll wait to get that. And he says pretty much the reason that they use this kind of a template is you can use this document for local and state and federal funding efforts. If you're looking at doing grants. So you've got all your information in one place. But this is a pretty typical presentation. One thing I questioned about is on page 26, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I was looking at the area in acres and the percentage of the watershed, and there's industrial, but it appears that it's industrial in the greater watershed. It looks like it's coming out of Pittsfield. It's color coded on that map, but I just highlighted that because I thought, well, that's interesting, but it's only 0.1% of our watershed is industrial.
Good.
And let's see.
Thankfully, the Houstong doesn't flow into the structure.
Pardon me?
I said, thankfully, the Houstong doesn't flow into the Stockbridge Bowl.
It's another one we would need.
A couple minor, there was some typos I found. Okay, so, and I don't remember if we had this in here the last time, the de-icing strategy plan. And if anybody's had a chance to read this. But I talked about, you know, we're installing the improved sand and salt spreader calibration equipment on its fleet in 2022, and I should change that to fiscal year.
What page are we on there?
We are on page, sorry, 45.
Okay.
Good.
So we'll put fiscal year 23, okay? To allow for accurate calibration and tracking capability to control and analyze salt volumes applied. The goal is to reduce the level of chlorides applied while still ensuring safe roads, particularly in watershed management areas. So I think we might have gone over that the last time. So that's all good. The stormwater improvement, and they had stormwater improvement plan, and I made it plural. Because we have a number of different ways that we're addressing this. And the first one is the Stockbridge Town Beach, currently undergoing renovations to address runoff issues. Parking's been terraced and culverts have been installed, et cetera. The next one the next one is the town has requested the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to address runoff issues at the public boat ramp. And I added, and is awaiting Department of Conservation and Recreation response.
Yeah.
Stormwater permitting has been transferred to the Stockbridge Conservation Commission to ensure adequate oversight of the buffer zone. Is that okay, Sally?
No, actually, that's one of the things that I corrected. So you'll
Okay.
see my notes that the stormwater management really does, for the most part, outside the buffer zone. Wetland Protection Act and the town wetlands bylaw do the buffer zone, the 150 or 200 feet, depending on which one you're looking at.
Okay,
The point of the stormwater bylaw was originally so that if you have, the way you do in many of the properties around the lake, you have a lot of upland And because it's steep and the bowl is a bowl, if there's a major project upland that exceeds 10,000 square feet, we would have a chance to regulate it, to make sure that we have a project right now that we were working on to do that, to keep the upland work from affecting the resource area or the buffer zone.
Okay,
So it's kind of two different things. And also I thought in that area that you should put in the planning board's
45.
LPOD,
okay,
because the planning board also regulates the buffer zone in
okay,
their regulations.
okay. And you.
But
put
anyway,
that-
it's in my notes. So,
Okay, great. And so you've got verbiage in there that you think is appropriate?
yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll add that and we'll adjust this one. Public outreach will be undertaken to increase awareness of landscaping, best management practices. And then this I just grabbed from, a generic source.
45 on there.
In terms of stormwater, trees.
Yeah, at the bottom, 45.
Oh, I have
But it's a
45.
different picture than there.
What's the problem, guys?
I just can't follow it on here up there because page 45 is this. for
Yeah,
me.
this isn't it.
This is, look at the screen and
Well, that's easy for you to see.
but I'll read it. I'll read it to you. So stormwater trees, and this is all landscaping best management practices. Stormwater trees can reduce stormwater runoff, and they're going to tell us if they need all this explanation from impervious areas such as parking lots, yada, yada. Trees have an effect on stormwater above the ground surface, at the ground surface, below the ground surface by slowing, storing, and infiltrating runoff. Native landscaping, native vegetation uses the plants, so it gives an explanation of native vegetation and the benefits of that. Soil amendments, the soil amendment is any material added to soil. So this is all in regards to public outreach and education. The use of bioswales, the use of vegetated swales, the use of rain gardens, rain barrels and rain chains, permeable pavement. So
Before you
that's-
move on, sorry, I was very confused by that whole section.
Okay,
First of all, I find stormwater trees to be an odd thing to call it.
well,
And
let's pick out that first word.
yeah, maybe trees, yeah, is good. And then the soil amendments, I thought that was also confusing. And I wondered if you could give some example of what soil amendments might be,
Okay,
because I didn't really get what it meant.
okay. And this is something that Steve and I didn't talk about,
Yeah,
but they'll certainly weigh in on this, whether they think this is appropriate or what level of detail you need. But yeah, examples, because I was kind of, like I said, I went out and grabbed this.
yeah.
Generic source. So we'll find examples of soil amendments. But obviously encouraging people to use things like rain gardens, vegetated swales, native plants, all that kind of thing.
They're actually required under the WPA to use native plantings,
Required under,
the Wetlands Protection Act. And the town bylaw, they're required to use native plants. If they,
okay. Now, is that only within a certain area?
yeah, within the regulated area, but
Okay.
so we might want to say,
200.
yeah, I mean, it was within 200 feet, but also, I mean, even if it's not 200 feet, obviously the health and health of the whole ecosystem is better if they have native plants than
Right,
non-native. So,
We could say required within 200 feet, recommended beyond.
exactly.
Yes.
So I'll change the wording on this and, we can pull that in. Okay, next thing is we go into the inflow and infiltration plan and subsequent long-range plan, because I was trying to address the relationship between those two things. So Stockbridge Sewer and Water Commission will be starting phase 3 of the DEP mandated inflow and infiltration study, I&I, during fiscal year 23. Phase 3 of the study is to include identification of the causes of the inflow and infiltration, while the subsequent phase 4 will address repairing the issues in the collection system as identified in phase 3. Once phase 4 is completed, capacity will be freed up at the wastewater treatment plant, which will then allow future sewer expansion projects to be considered. So therefore, leading into the fact that, you know, sewer expansion is not going to happen anytime soon. Then we've got Massachusetts Municipal Vulnerability Preparation Program, and that's that MVP grant that we applied for and received. And so let's go over this. This is new. Patrick sent some verbiage to me. The town is implementing multiple efforts to understand the issues surrounding stormwater runoff. Stockbridge voters moved responsibility for our town, and I think it should be town stormwater management and erosion control bylaw. So I spelled out the way our bylaw is actually written. That's the title of our bylaw. To the Conservation Commission to align these efforts with other wetlands protection regulations. So weigh in on that, Sally, if there's anything incorrect in that statement. The town also applied, and then I added, and has been awarded a Massachusetts Municipal Vulnerability Preparation Action Grant, because the specifics of what grant we were getting was not in here. So I just thought, let's be specific about this program, because they're going to be very well aware of this program at the state level. In conjunction with Lenox, New Marlborough, and Pittsfield to assess all culverts in the town of Stockbridge. The initial assessment is complete, and we are now evaluating the data in the context of floodplain analysis and climate change. And we had kind of an incomplete sentence. Patrick, you also had might impact their type and size. So I didn't know what you wanted there, but I thought it wasn't necessary.
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
Wordsmith.
And then let me see. Then the last statement was fine. Finally, we have increased monitoring of streams that lead from the watershed to the Stockbridge Bowl to assess both the volume and contents of stormwater, especially important as we experience precipitation events of increasing intensity. So everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So. Alrighty, so I started plugging in some of these costs. I still have to complete the costing stuff. I'm waiting for more information. Let's see, so we already had in the annual water quality and monitoring. That's roughly 40,000 a year. Annual aquatic plant survey by Tom Coot is 1,400 a year, according to Cheryl, our accountant. Annual water chestnut monitoring and control with aquatic roots. And I'm guesstimating, and I think this is a high estimate, of 15,000 a year, but these can be approximations. And I think that's just being like really conservative. It's probably, as time goes on and we keep monitoring year after year, it's probably that cost will go down. Zebra mussel, and Gary, you can advise me about this, but we get the state grant that's 6,000 a year right
He
now.
applies for that each year.
Right.
We get it the year after.
Right. So that's on
We're
an
in good
annual
shape.
basis. Do we get any other funding for that? Okay.
No.
And that's sufficient?
22, yeah.
Okay,
We don't get anything in the state anymore?
We used to get 6.
Oh, we get 6 from the
6,000.
state.
yeah.
So far, we're in good shape.
Now, when I talked to Steve about this, you know, I pointed out that we have monies that have already been expended, and significant monies in the case of dredging. So I said, you know, I think it would be really helpful for them to see that we've already spent X number of dollars. You know, this has been a big expenditure here on some of these projects. So you have both what's already been spent, you have what has been raised, the monies that we have currently available, and then we have the total cost to then come up with what do we still need to raise. So he said, fine, he goes, just send me, and they will massage this and rearrange it in some way, shape, or form. They'll put it in a chart, I think, or a graph. so that we break out those different pieces. But so I'm waiting for some of that other information in terms of totals that have already been spent, et cetera. But I did plug in here dredging project funds raised approximately $1.5 million. That's attributed to Stockbridge Bowl Association. Water Chestnut, town budget, I don't know what I was doing there, but up to $10,000, I believe was your limit for the SBA, Pat, of what you would contribute.
Yes, for this year. I'm trying to figure out if I need to budget something for next year, but yeah, this year it was up to 10,000.
Okay, so we can put fiscal year 23 and then to be determined in the future?
Yes,
Okay,
I would like to keep it with my board approval as a budget item because I believe we're going to have to continue to do this for at least 10 years. So,
okay. So I'll figure out some way to word that. And like I said, I'm still waiting for more and I've got to do a little more digging through all the paperwork I have.
As an aside, are we going to recommend increased budget on hand pulling for the town as well? Because I would support that. I mean,
Hand pulling for what though?
The chestnuts and.
yeah, water chestnuts and, you know,
Oh, yeah, I think
I don't know if you want.
we're gonna be, I'm sure, I'm assuming everybody.
Yeah, I think what Pat's saying is that we should make that as a
I
recommendation.
mean, if we're talking about budgets, I think we could also indicate that the town is committed to it and expand
Yeah.
those efforts.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. That would certainly be a recommendation that becomes.
I just don't know if you're
budget.
here.
Yep. Let's see, dredging project plan, August 25th. So I said there was a meeting with NEPA to determine the permitting requirements. Septic replacement plan, there is really none. Stormwater improvement. So this is just like a reiteration of, regurgitation of things that have already been mentioned. Sewer expansion to be determined by Sewer and Water Commission. Again, stating I&I has to be completed before that can be undertaken. De-icing strategy plan to be finalized before winter 2022. And I don't know where we stand right now, but I know there was still one truck out that I think was being outfitted. So that may have been done by now. And that I didn't get. I think there's not a whole lot more that we have to put in other than dollar amounts. And I think that's it. So we're very close to the end. I just have to get more dollar amounts. I think some of the costing will be able to be coming right from Springfield GZA to Connecticut GZA. Although I do have some of that in my possession, and I think Michael does too, and Greg does too. So I might just check with you and Greg, Michael, to make sure I'm plugging in the right numbers.
Right. Well,
But,
everything goes, all expenses went through the town.
right,
It's the town project. So any expenses to GZA, including, the whole diversion pipe and everything was spent at the time that whether diplomatically or whether to get this done. Because there was some controversy whether Concom had gotten permission. Sally, you could weigh in better from NHESP to let us do that, because at the end, they didn't want us to do it after we did the diversion pipe, which cost almost $1 million. More, yeah, well, almost plus or minus $1 million. Yeah. So, the amount of money, you see, maybe from a business point of view, I feel like that we need some sense of, is there an end line? Is there a goalpost that they want us to pass? Otherwise, we're spending money, town money and people's money needlessly, if this is not going to be a real project in NHESP's mind. They keep saying it is.
dredging project.
The restoration project. And I really think that somehow, whether with Sally's help and your help and Michael Canales and Greg, that we need a commitment from them that's saying, yes, we are in agreement with this restoration. These are the things we need you to do, and we'll give you the okay. But for 6 years, I've been working with them, and it just seems that there's one thing after another after another.
Talking to you while you're on a meeting.
And we seem to be put roadblocks over everything. So for me, it's a very frustrating, whatever we do until I know that NHESP is going to say, yes, you've done this. We're going to give you the okay.
Well, every step along the way. I mean, we're talking about a lot of regulatory agencies that come into.
Right, but the first one that needs to be, without a doubt, is NHESP from all the meetings that I've had.
Okay.
That seems to be, without their blessing, none of the other stuff seems to be able to be moved forward.
Well, to get done with the lake management plan, what I was talking about in terms of.
No, I understand that.
The dollars is just what's going to take, what is that estimate for the dredging that we have, which is roughly 4 million.
I got off the subject, you're right.
One thing that we don't have still, and there still has to be some field engineering done, is the Bullard Woods, the deposition area. So we still don't necessarily have all those costs, but we might be able to get a ballpark.
Yeah.
That's something.
And I have to leave. I'm going to try and get back on the phone, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out.
Okay, well, thank you, Sally, and good luck. Take care. So at any rate, that's number one. And maybe now is a good time because I think pretty much we've gone through what's here. I will incorporate verbiage from Sally. Then this is going to go back to Steve Roy, and he and I will have another conversation. And I think we're just about set as long as I get those last figures in there. Then we're pretty much all set. They'll take the ball and run with it. This is probably a good time for you, Michael, to lead off in terms of updates because it's on your mind, is in terms of the MEPA meeting.
Well, yeah, you mean now, right now?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't at the that's why I was hoping Mike Canales, because the two people that were at the MEPA meeting.
Okay, so you haven't heard from Greg?
Yes, I did hear, but I can only say secondhand. What?
I'm gonna go get him.
Oh, would
We
you?
can bring him in.
Oh, sure, that would be great. And I'd be basic, what Greg told me in a way was basically that he had gotten a history from GZA. The MEPA people had gotten a history from GZA of what the whole issue
Who are
was.
the Mika people?
MEPA is the government, one of the Delaware, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts EPA.
Yeah, the
Environmental Protection.
EPA. And they, after hearing it, they said, this sounds more like an ecological restoration, which is what we started off calling it, is because dredging has a connotation that's different than restoration. And restoration is really what we should be pushing. I think what we should be pushing. It sounded like MEPA was saying the same thing after hearing it.
Okay.
But Michael Canales can tell you better. Is he coming?
Available?
And is this, can we on screen share? Or?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Stop to share.
Good morning. We wanted just a rundown, a synopsis of your meeting with MEPA.
Right. So the MEPA meeting was a pre-application meeting, which is where GZA or whichever consultant you're using goes forward and says, here's how we're planning to approach the project. Here's the permits that we see we have to submit based on the project, whatever it is. And then MEPA reviews that and then comments back on what should or shouldn't be included. So they went through, just coming in here, but they basically went through their plan and MEPA agreed with that's exactly what they would need to do as far as getting this project moving forward. So, yeah, it was a good meeting. There was no surprises. So no curveballs. I mean, that's mainly when I was there, and I know Greg was on the call too, and mainly just looking for, were they going to throw a curveball or something that we didn't expect? And they did.
Did they say what were the different processes that we needed to go? Did they give us an outline or?
Well, yeah, GZA just laid out their permits that they would need from MEPA. And MEPA just agreed that, yes.
Such as NHESP and all those different, or is it something totally
Just
different?
theirs.
Oh, just theirs?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
short.
well, I didn't know how that.
Yeah, it's not them lining up what's needed by the other ones. It's about them saying, this is what you need to get your MEPA permit.
Right.
And these are the ones that you would need, and this is the order that we need them in. And GZA presented, like I said, their anticipated plan, and MEPA agreed that, yes, that was what would be needed. So there were no surprises, no nothing. Project continues on.
Right, and Greg, in his synopsis to us, for one at the SBA and one to me prior, like when I was talking, that GZ had mentioned about all taking away the silt, and the reason why we had to do it because of the pipes and everything like that. And they had mentioned that perhaps we should call it an ecological restoration rather than a dredging project. Can you elaborate on that at all, or?
Other than them stating that, that's exactly what was stated.
That was exactly what was stated?
Fine, pretty much.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know if there was more.
So that's them giving direction on, yeah, should you be filing
Did
this as dredging, should you be filing because no matter what, sediment removal is basically covered under the same permitting as, what if you were like digging for anything else or digging out for anything else.
So there was no advantage per se to them of calling it one, of doing it under,
MEPA was just recommending that they do it that, you know.
which way? Ecological?
Was the ecological.
Okay.
Yeah.
That it would be.
We can change the
yeah.
verbiage.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just have you here for the first time, right?
Right.
Now, has Nat Arai given you the roadmap for the permitting yet that we asked for?
No, I'll follow up with them on that.
Okay, if we could get that, that would be really helpful because that gives us just a better picture of
Yeah,
the steps that we have to go through.
right.
Okay,
Yep, I can get that from, because we did ask for the price breakdown, he did, but he didn't lay out exactly what an estimated time schedule would be, other than, I think it was like 2 months ago, he said it'd take about 18 months to get through all the permitting, have it at 70% design and go out to bid. And
but the permitting price breakdown is in that other document that you reported on before, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Before we get
Okay.
going on this.
all right, thank you,
I
Mike.
tell you, I saw something I did not like.
Does anyone have any questions of Mike at this point?
No.
Good, well, thank you. Sorry to interrupt your day.
no problem.
Actually, while you're, do you guys have a sense of whether and at what point, I know we talked about this before, we might want to have the Fleetwood guys, Dave and Mark, review this just from the point of view of the regulators? I mean, Michael's kind of primary interface there. I don't know if we're at the point yet where we might want to request that of either Concom or you.
We did that at the last meeting, Patrick. We did that at the last meeting and we talked about Fleetwood possibly reviewing it, and we had some questions, as to who would pay for it and that kind of thing. But I think everybody was generally in favor of having them review it.
I know, I was wondering if we're at the point, Sally, where we want to, pull the trigger on that.
What would they be reviewing?
Well, they're not.
Reading it from the perspective of former regulators to see if it meets
Reading what?
the lake management plan, I'm sorry.
Oh, the lake management. Oh, I thought you were referring to
Lake management.
the.
No.
I thought you were
lake
still
man-
on
yeah.
dredging.
No, we are, but you're in the room. Before you left, I wanted
That's why I
to,
was like.
no, I'm sorry. I
Welcome
changed
to my marriage, right?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, yeah.
And looking at it, I mean, we're not at that point yet, Pat.
We're not, okay, that was my question.
That point.
Okay.
Because GZA, obviously, they're under contract to do this. They have their own experts. They'll be massaging this. There's going to be significant change in terms of the organization. It's probably some of the wording. But once we get to a point, I think we did all agree, basically, that it wouldn't be a bad idea. The one concern that needs to be looked at is obviously, what will that cost? And the other thing is, how much will they be limited in terms of what they can and cannot comment on?
Right,
Based on it being former state employees.
yes.
So there may be some limitation. They're going to know that. That's something to ask them if we want to pursue that.
Right, and I can bring that up to them because I know that, yeah, there are definitely, if they were involved in some aspects, they can not ever, if they were the regulators on them, so review or do. So that could be a concern, but they can always check and confirm what they can or cannot do.
Okay.
And then decide what to do as far as that, yeah.
Yeah. So if we can find out what the cost is and what budget that's coming from.
I think what we do
We know,
is
Sally?
once we have a draft, far enough along draft plan, and Sally, please jump in, but if probably send the draft plan to them and say, what would it take for you guys to review it, and can you legally review it based on your work at DEP, and then they can get back to us on it, and then we can figure out what direction to go.
So let me ask you a question. If they can't review this, what was the reason, what was the idea of hiring this company, these ex-members of DEP?
Yeah.
Go.
Go ahead, Sally.
The reason we were thinking, the reason we were thinking about doing it is because they would be able to give us a sense of what is passable. If there is some conflict that they're concerned about, Mark Stinson is the
We've lost you, Sally.
possibly. Okay, well, I'm gonna let you.
But why we hired them, directly to your question, why we hired them to do notice of intent review for projects,
Oh, okay.
stuff like that. They weren't hired for the dredging.
Okay, I didn't know. I'm just asking,
They
yeah.
were hired to advise the Conservation Committee on the Wetland Protection Act and stuff
Yeah,
in their scope.
that makes sense.
And specific to the lake management plan, obviously they were never involved in our lake management plan before. I don't know
When
why.
I first said that, I thought it was about the dredging, and I thought he was specifically
Right.
involved in the dredging.
Yeah.
So that was, sorry, my confusion on the ship.
I mean, if these guys can't be involved in generic lake management plans going forward, I mean, I'm sure that's going to be part of their consulting.
Yeah, and they'd be looking at it just from the regulatory
Yeah.
side of it, not, you know.
I thought the idea was sort of like, in my head, was to give it to them to do an overview and say, yeah, this is a good, not to be specific per se, but this is the way it should be done, or this is but whether we do it or not, it's up to Sally and the group. Yeah. I mean, up to Roxanne and the group, I apologize. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sally's in the group too.
No, I understand that, but you're our chair. You're our leader. I'm just saying, you're our chair. Yeah. All right.
All righty,
Sally, of course.
all righty. Any questions from the public that's here? I don't see any hands raised.
I have one little thing. Actually, you could say for this one too. We're meeting with the climate adaptation kind of director for this area, the MVP director at 9:30. And she's asked us just to sort of, brainstorm on projects that Stockbridge might like to embark on in terms of new grant requests. I didn't know if the group wanted to spend a few minutes just sort of brainstorming
I was
before
going to
9:30.
discuss that.
What?
I was going to bring something up like that.
Well, we're meeting with them. Michael and I are meeting with them at 9:30. So.
Well, I just was at dinner last night and friends told me that Lake Mansfield just got $1 million. Now, I don't know if I'm hearing right or whatever. Did anyone hear anything like that?
Billion is more than a billion.
So I don't know, Sally or anyone, if anybody chimes in, and I'm going like, wow.
For what?
I'm not sure, but they said it was for the lake. Now, this was dinner conversation of people who lived in Great Barrington. So they said, but it just caught my ear. But so if you talk about grants or something for the lake or whatever, or.
Yeah, I mean,
for this-
in this specific instance, it has to have a climate spin to it. So, the question is like, do we have?
Well, I don't think anything, what kind of climate spin could anything that we do here
Like,
affect the climate?
I mean,
Changes in the weather pattern and.
No, I understand that,
water.
but that's bigger than anything that we do, no?
I don't know if it's anything though that's gonna be applicable, because the most obvious climate change thing that will impact the lake and possibly cyanobacteria
the re-
is temperature.
yeah.
It's just- But
So which way are you talking about? How we affect it or how the climate affects us?
How we can mitigate climate impacts. I think that's.
Okay, well, I think.
So for example, the culvert sizing project that we
Yeah.
are just completing, that's around evaluating all of them and coming up with a prioritization of which ones need to be replaced. That's the example. We could look at land use in the watershed. Michael, I don't know if we could spin sort of that groundwater, the subsurface water project into kind of how climate might impact the reservoir. I don't know. I just feel like we got the ear of a woman that can help us get some
You got
grants.
the cyanobacteria issue.
Yeah.
You got, which is huge. The cyanobacteria
Yeah.
could do devastation to a town's economy.
Especially here.
And yeah, we're a tourist, a destination. It could be devastating. I had a meeting with the DEP when we got the 319 grant, and I took Jane Pierce, I think it was, Jane Pierce, who was the head of that. I took her up to Crapalo to see the lake when they were going to give us the grant. And I said, the impact, if this lake goes bad, the impact economically, because that was just for environmental when they were giving it. And they said now they're adding economic issues, how these things economically, all these agencies are going to affect the town. So you may want to put the spin of the devastation, not just to the lake, but the lake and then the economy of the town and whatever. I mean, just as an added.
Right. Well, I mean, culvert size is a big thing. I had somebody give me their opinion, somebody in the public give me their opinion that they thought that over by the causeway, that those culverts were too small.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that information was coming from.
I heard that too.
That's an obvious area to look
They're getting
at.
compressed. Somebody was worried that they're
Yeah.
rounder.
But Mike Buffoni, you had brought up before doing some type of a survey in the lake, and didn't it have to do with water temperature, or? It's just,
And when we talk to the geologists, Patrick and I, they do use thermal cameras to see, in the summertime and you got springs feeding a lake, you're going to see kind of cooler spots where the water might be coming up to the surface. And we all see whenever the lakes are freezing over, we all see the spots that aren't freezing from the water being warmer from the springs feeding in. So the thermal imaging that they use, like NOAA weather, I know the tuna fishermen use it. Fishermen use it a lot, but they did say to Patrick and I that they would use that. They have, I think, drones, wasn't it, Patrick, that they were talking about that have thermal cameras on them, which was pretty interesting to see where the cooler water in the summertime is feeding in for any underwater sources that are feeding the body of water. So that certainly could be, something to look into for sure.
I think that's the only thing that I can come up with is anything that has to do with temperature or culvert size, those two things that maybe MVP, you could try to utilize MVP.
Yeah, and the other thing we could do, I don't believe that the grant that we have included the sample culvert design that the other three towns got, and they had specifically encouraged us to apply for that because it's sort of out of fairness.
What was the name of it again?
The other of the four towns in it, New Barrow, Lennox, Pittsfield, and us. The other three, all as part of the grant, get a priority culvert design paid for.
Priority?
Yeah, and they encouraged us to also choose one. We hadn't identified one as a town before when the grant was submitted, but they said as a supplement to that they had asked us to figure out a priority culvert that we should.
Okay. Well, maybe we can come up with a priority culvert design that's really.
Yeah, I mean, are there any that we know of besides,
attractive and effective, but I mean attractiveness, because I know, like, looking at some of the slides from some of the presentations that we had, I mean, there's some really good looking culverts out there.
Oh my God, yeah.
I don't think we have any of them, so it would be really nice if.
Yeah, well, I mean, but also like, are there any that are undersized, especially with, there's a lot of worry about the trout fisheries, and I'm wondering if there's any that feed into the lake that go back up the hill so that we could be looking at too.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the culverts at the causeway, those were constructed that way. They're a squat style, more oval shaped culvert. That's the way those are designed. And I think they're 6 foot or 8 foot. I can't remember. We did measure them.
There's six.
And as far as,
And the state, Michael, the state was just here literally a month ago, doing an evaluation of those. They did their, I don't know, they come every 2 or 3 years, and I was driving by and I saw them myself and talked to them, and they were like, everything looks great here. So, yeah, nobody's considering those on the list.
and as far as like a geological deal where the bowl's getting fed with underwater sources, underground sources. The Shadow Brook is bone dry. That's the first time we've seen that happen. Duck Pond Brook is bone dry. I don't know about Lily Brook because the lake backfeeds into that little pond area where we take a sample. So I don't know what Lily Brook is bringing down in there, but the lake has actually held its level pretty well for how little rain we have this year. As our water supply, thankfully. We did go to the outlet, the spillway is just kind of dribbling some water over. I just did we are DCR weather spotters, and I just did the tallies up. We only got 1.56 inches of rain in the month of August.
Wow.
So, for what it's worth.
Michael,
Go ahead.
what, I drive the harvester and I realize, I'm amazed how high the lake is actually relative to the amount of, I was expecting it much worse going through the narrows where the rocks are and everything like that. What do you think you attribute that?
I don't know, but the more you think about this underwater, underground sources or whatever, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when me and Patrick talked to the geologist, I had said, as far as the 30 years I've worked here for the water department, that reservoir that we have, and when other people are struggling with water, that reservoir is just usually rock solid, and they instantly both said to each other, what does that tell you?
Did they say maybe 50 to 70% of the water that's coming in there might be subsurface?
Sure, yeah.
It was pretty amazing, actually.
So that's what you think?
It's pretty interesting, and I think it'd be a really good thing to do for the bowl too.
And also with the UMass guys, we've already identified the consultants could help us to write the grant, which is like, was what kind of screws up last year is like the consultants didn't have a time. Jeff left the BSC group and ended up not finishing that grant request that we had looked at with them for Campusa. So, or Campusa was with HVA, whichever. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, maybe we'll try to focus on that one. I think that's a really good idea.
Okay.
As far as the question that was asked about Great Barrington, so Great Barrington is receiving $992,000 in an action grant to fix up the recreational areas of Lake Mansfield. Back in 2018 and 19, they proposed a plan to completely redo the drive, because I guess they had to close the road. So it's rebuilding the roadway, creating a rain garden on one end, preventing flooding and erosion off the road. So therefore you can tie it into an MVP action grant because they're limiting the others. It's a $1.8 million project, of which they now received $992,000.
And that's for the recreational area, for the beach area.
It's also, the road was closed for a while.
Well, it's a one-way road. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
And it's closed, and they actually can go online and look it up. They have a whole plan for how the park, all new trees, all new drainage to drain the parking runoff.
Right.
And not directly into the lake and everything else. So, yeah.
Okay,
So it's been something they've had in the work for a couple of years.
that's nothing.
And those are, you wonder if there's any way to fit, once we get far enough along where you have the designs and the rest, could dredging fall under an MVP? Could actually.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Right, but we need to get it just like that. They got it to the point where here's what we're gonna do, and then they presented the plan. So since we're almost there, this could be.
Right.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey, just a heads up, when I heard that, I'm going, we really should be thinking also right now already about grants and stuff like that to get started, because they take a while to
Yeah, and
get
that's how
through.
we fund maybe the balance
Yeah.
of this.
Hey, I don't know if this is a water and sewer or group issue. I just need somebody, adjacent to one of the properties, and it looks like it's on state land, a very old cap to a well seems to have become dislodged. And, that you can basically, fall into it very easily. Who should we direct that to?
notify the landowner? Do you know whose property it is?
States, but it's adjacent to a family's land and it's like 100 feet from their
Got to
property.
talk to you, I would imagine. No?
I'll talk to you.
If it's state property, I would notify
Notify the state.
somebody at the Commonwealth because it's a big liability for them. That's their responsibility.
Oh, it's a state. I thought you said.
That's what I understand, yeah.
DEP.
Oh, I thought it was a town. I'm sorry.
It could be DCR, it could be DOT on land.
I mean, it looks like it's a 19th century well that has a very old cap on it that became dislodged. Yeah.
Right, okay, so coming back on topic, can we allow Michael Canales to go back to work?
Wait, I find that,
This is work.
yeah. I mean, I'm not here for nothing. All right, Michael, thank you.
I'm glad to come in and.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All righty, so let me see. I don't see Jim Willis here. Mike Buffoni, do you have anything else to report from the water department?
Yes, well, we did do the sampling last week, and the good news was that the thermocline was down about 10 meters, which we like to see it at. Last year it did get a little higher. There was a little concern there, but it's still down at 10 meters, so 30 feet, which was good. And samples are all off. Like I said, Shadow Brook was dry, Duck Pond Brook was dry. The outlet the spillway was not going over. So we did all the samples. They're off to the lab, and results will probably be back, I'd say, early next week. And we'll go out again this month and grab some more samples towards the end of the month.
And without any water going into the spillway, what's the impact on Larry Water?
Dry.
I understand that, but I mean,
There's one other culvert that comes into it. Other than that, the
I
lake.
mean, should we lower it just a tiny bit to?
No, you don't want to lower it. It's low enough, the lake. When you say lower, you meant the lake?
No, I just mean making sure it just stays a tiny bit wet so it doesn't kill everything like.
Oh, on
Larry Water.
Wait,
Oh, that's probably coming. Is that coming out through the,
is that coming through the dam or the overflow?
The overflow is dry. The gate there where the gate is at the end of the spillway, or the end of the.
there should be water coming through that?
Oh, there's usually water coming out of that, but I'm not sure if it's working or it's all the way shut. It seems to be, but there's some water coming out of it.
There's a required flow.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I know.
Who's responsible for that, Sally?
I'm sorry?
Who's responsible for that? For the flow?
It was always the highway department.
It was, I don't know, Gary Kleinerman did it for a while.
Yep.
Chuck Evans did it for a while. There's a monitoring station downstream. I'm not sure exactly where it is.
The monitoring station is hardly visible now because the head walls at the bridge have caved in, the old Curtisville Bridge. That's where the monitor is.
Yeah.
So it's like a ruler type thing attached to the side of the stones in the arch.
No one's responsible.
No one is?
Okay, so,
It's a required flow though, that must be maintained. So you can't just cut off Larry Wog.
Yeah, who's responsible for it though? There's gotta be somebody.
It was, as far as I know, and whenever, it was always the highway, you did it, you physically
10 years.
did it. But I always remembered being the highway department.
well, physically doing it, but who's responsible?
No, that's what I'm
for
saying.
Monitoring and the
Oh.
decision-making about
Right.
taking action.
It was always Shep Evans years ago, as Sally
Well,
said.
let's figure out who should be. Make a recommendation. You know,
Sally, could somebody on the Conservation Commission do that?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Sally,
The other issue here is if we've got a monitoring station down at Curtisville and there's some issue about that, do we need to move that monitoring station or make sure that it's accessible? That's a question for you, Mike Buffoni.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know how that flow is derived, but yeah, it should be moved for sure.
Okay. All right, so things to take up in future.
But is it dry right now is my question.
Yeah,
We can take
Is
a,
Larry
there
Ward
should
dry?
be
It's
water
not
going
dry.
through the dam.
Berry Wog Brook is not totally dry. There is still
Not
water
totally
flowing
dry.
there, but not
Okay.
very much.
All right.
We might have. to-
you know, I had mentioned this many times. My big concern is that it's been closed for 3 years now. And we really should be having some, either the highway or whatever, just every once in a while turning that thing so it doesn't freeze or doesn't get, well, you don't know. When you need it, you want to make sure that that thing is working. And just a maintenance on that thing, because we sort of leave it and forget it because we haven't done anything with it. So as a select,
We get it fixed.
There was quite a few handles that operate that gate. And I can't remember who, but they were all brought down to us down here at the water and sewer department last year, the year before.
okay.
There was too many handles out there and people were going up there and kind of messing around with it. And
Right.
But Gary had one and I bought two from the manufacturer and gave it to,
I think
Len.
Len had one or two. We have 2 or 3 of them. already
Yeah,
in the shop.
so I don't know, but I really feel like, having worked, in fact, that you just want to give it a few turns every once in a while, make sure that thing,
Yeah, oh, I
you
agree.
know, yeah,
Okay.
You gotta grease it too.
yeah,
All right.
whatever it takes, so that in an emergency, you know it's working.
Yeah, if Concom feels comfortable with me doing it or whatever, that's totally fine. I can go up there and open it a little bit and let some more water out. That's probably why the lake is higher than we usually see it.
Yeah. Mike, why don't you come into the next meeting if you can on the 13th? And we'll try and find out the information and see what we should do.
Okay, just send me an email and remind me, because by the time the meeting's over, I'll already have forgotten.
Okay. Will do.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, Water and Sewer Commission. John, you have any?
Nothing else.
Okay. Conservation, any updates, Sally?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. Well, and thank you for your input, by the way. Michael Nathan, Stockbridge Bowl Association?
I passed, there's nothing pertinent to this, you know. Pat, is there anything that you can think of?
The
Yeah.
only thing I'm thinking, Michael, is that the board passed a resolution to allow me to release part of the community preservation funds so that GZA can continue its work.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, I apologize for that, because that's a big one, and I totally, with all of this, thank you, Pat.
Yeah, and Pat, for the public's information, what was that amount?
172,000.
Yeah, it was up to, I believe, yeah, Gary, you've got it right, 172. I can look up the exact amount, but that's what's in the fund right now.
Okay, thank you. Patrick White.
Hey, Sally, so did we end up sending out Tom Cook this year?
Yes, he went out in July.
Will we see a report?
We have the report.
We do have it.
It's sent to GZA. It's being incorporated.
Okay. Anything interesting in it?
No, except
Yeah, I
more
do.
water milfoil, and it basically agreed.
Say it again?
It basically agreed with the solitude findings. So there was more significant water milfoil this year.
Okay. All right. No, nothing else.
Yeah.
Roxanne, can you pass that report to conservation, please?
Oh, sure. Okay, and Gary, any updates?
Zebra Mountain is going well. We have the Josh coming up on the 18th of September, and, you can't launch a boat especially on a trailer that day. But we could use, if anyone knows anyone who has a boat that's available, we needed 2 or 3 more boats for safety around the lake that day.
Okay,
And we'll be closing on Columbus Day weekend.
okay. Thank you. So do we have any questions from the public or comments? Anyone else on the
I
commission?
just have one thing. I've been contacted by the Lake Buell Association about how to handle what they want to get done. They're about 30 years behind us. I told them the first thing they have to do is get the town and their association on the same page. They are fighting each other on this, so.
Okay.
But they asked if in the future, if we could come down and talk to them sometime, and I said we'd be happy to, so.
Who contacted you?
I was looking.
What's a lady?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because
But
I had dealt with them years ago.
yeah, they have a lot to do, and the town and the lake association are miles apart.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I told her, I said, you ought to start working on your town relationships and
Here you go.
get, and set up a plan.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you've got any contact information for whoever,
Yeah, I have it. I just couldn't find it right
yeah,
now.
if you forward it to me, I'd be
Okay.
happy to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
See what we can arrange. Okay, so I don't see any hands up. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.